Good evening and welcome to 365 Days of Stories with Theo Mayer. Here we are on day 84, Saturday, and multiple of 7, so it's my day to tell a little bit about my life as a steward. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about the power of the wind. Now, for those of us that live along the coast of Big Sur, especially up on ridges, we know how powerful that wind can be. Where I live, the mountains are pretty steep, and the storms come in right off the ocean and hit the mountains. And when it's raining, it rains up as the water is just swept along the contours of the land. When I was building my house, the one I'm sitting in right now, I drove up one evening with a load of materials in a storm. And I parked my truck right outside the windows that are right out here to the west. And I had a bunch of 2x6s in the back of the truck, and my headlights were on and facing kind of toward where the mountains are, or where the hill goes steeply down. And I left my lights on for some reason as I first started to move materials out. And again, it's evening, dark, so the headlights are facing out. And I'm watching as the rain is raining up rather than down. It's just sweeping probably at about a, 40, 45 degree angle, shooting just straight up. And I went upstairs to the second floor where the eaves were, which I hadn't finished. And water was just coming right up over underneath the eaves and over the top of the walls and right into the floor, the second floor. And after that night, I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to build this house like a boat. Unfortunately, in my younger years, I'd actually worked on boats, so I, made my house as waterproof as I possibly could, knowing that water was gonna come at it from perhaps any which direction. This year, we've had some intense storms, and I have seen more trees come down, especially more live trees than any other year I've been up here. There's just an intensity to the storms that it's almost like a hammer as the wind kind of hits and gusts. And I've never experienced that before. It was more steady wind, even though the winds have been stronger. This packs a punch, so to speak. Now, today, I actually showed a sailboat that I have to potentially sell. I've had it for many years, 14 years now, and for most of my life, I've had sailboats. This is the nicest boat I've ever had, but I'm just finding I don't use it anymore, and I feel like I really should pass it on. And it's just an incredible boat that was highly modified by a very good friend of mine, Robin Jeffers. It was a Wilderness 30. He put a scoop on it, changed the cockpit, rigged it in such a way that it made it very, very easy to sail. And it's quite an amazing thing when you consider that power of the wind can be harnessed in such a way that even very, very large ships can be moved through the water at very rapid speeds with no propulsion source other than trimming the sails to the wind. I find it quite amazing. And there's something about it that it's like harnessing this powerful energy in such a way that seems so incredibly positive at the same time. And it's a beautiful thing. I found the more beautiful the boat, typically, especially sailboats this is, the more beautiful the sailboat, the better it moves through the water and the wind. Sails are incredible to view as the wind is coming through them, or coming onto them. They become a foil, much like an airplane's wing. And there's the shape those sails make that allows the boat to be pushed forward. And I mean, what an amazing thing. I have a sloop right now. So it has a mainsail and a jib. And the mainsail is the sail that comes right off the mast and is triangular in its shape. And the bottom part is held by the boom. And the jib is just held in front of the sail by the forestay, and typically is at an angle where it's held, and then comes back, also a triangle on this particular boat. There are, of course, many, many different rigs. But those two sails, trimmed properly, you're going, in this boat, which isn't a very big boat, but very light, you end up going 9-10 miles an hour across the water. It's a pretty wonderful thing. So I first got into boats. I was on a trip. I'm traveling to Central America with my friend Nate Cooperman. I think we were 20, 21 maybe. And we decided we were going to try to get all the way to where his family lived in Brazil, or part of his family. Now, we ended up traveling into Honduras, and once we were in Honduras, we hopped aboard a little cargo boat. And in exchange for being able to island hop on this cargo boat, we agreed to help unload the cargo when we got to the various points. Well, we went to the Bay Islands, so there was Utila and Roatan, and at least one more island that I remember that we visited. But in Roatan, I was quite taken by the beauty, by the coral reefs, which I went diving on, just incredible. And I was also taken by this 120-foot schooner that was there to get rebuilt. And I decided after some time that I was going to bail out on going all the way to Brazil. I went back to the US for a little bit, got my dive gear, and came and went to help out on this big sailboat that was going to be rebuilt with Honduran mahogany. Anyway, this guy never got his act together. I lived on the boat for at least 6 weeks, kind of doing little odds and ends here and there. And then this couple that was there, they were caretaking a boat. They were kind of skippering the boat, caretaking the boat for some guy that lived in New Jersey. They asked me to come sailing with them. And I think that's Hope and Larry were their names. So it was a 46-foot cutter-rigged sloop. So I had 2 foresails in the front, 2 of those jibs, and the mainsail. Off we go, cruising around Roatan. Dropping anchor, I would dive in, usually get us some kind of a seafood meal. And I thought, wow, this is just an incredible way to go. You're going with your bed, your kitchen, everything. And from there, I sailed back on a 46-foot cutter-rigged sloop to Florida. And when I got back to California to TA for Chuck Baxter's subtitle community class, shortly after that, I bought a 22.5-foot Pearson Electra, a little fiberglass boat, full keel, and lived aboard it and sailed it. And just loved that whole life of being on the water. Living aboard a sailboat's pretty amazing too, because you're rocked to sleep every night. The thing that, if you think about, okay, life as a steward, well, what's this got to do with it? The truth is, it takes a lot to maintain a boat. And some of the bottom paints especially are pretty toxic. But to be able to propel yourself and rather large vessels through the water just with the wind, I think is an amazing thing. Sailing stories, there's so many. But one of the other things that was very cool that you can no longer do, that I did with two of my boats, was I careened my boats. Now, careening is an art where you go into like a sandy beach at a high tide, and you tie your boat off. You actually run your boat aground, and you tie it off so it can't move. And you hopefully do this somewhere like where the water is fairly calm. There's no waves, of course. Tie your boat off. The tide goes out, and as the tide goes out, your boat is left high and dry by the time you get to low tide. Now, it's best to do this when you've got a high tide that is like in the very, very early morning, when it's still dark. You bring your boat in, tie it up so that by, 4 hours later or so, the tide is out and you can start working on your boat, say by, 8 or 9 in the morning. Hopefully you've scrubbed your boat ahead of time to get anything off that shouldn't be there. And if you've got a boat with a keel, the boat will lay down on one side. It allows you to work on that upper dry side. So I would paint one side of my boat, come in the next morning, the tide, the whole thing would be about an hour later because it's all with the moon cycle. And then I would lean the boat over on the other side, do the other side of the boat with bottom paint. Saved me, some money of haul out fees, and I don't know, it was just a really cool way of working with the forces of nature, to make something like that happen. So I did that with full keel boat with my Pearson, but I also did it with a trimaran that I had. I had a brown Sea Runner 31-foot trimaran that was cut a rig sloop, so 2 foresails. Very fast boat. But the thing about that trimaran was I felt like if I ever flipped it over, that was going to be it. It'd be impossible to get it back. And there was one day when I was out where I was on a reach, which is a point of sail, and sailing along kind of a crest of a wave. And I came off the side, and the wind was pushing me this way. And so the whole boat felt like it was so close to tipping over. I didn't feel comfortable keeping it after that. Then I ended up with a full keel 32-foot boat built in New Zealand out of Cowrie. It was a cold molded boat, means strips of wood glued one on top of the other. Very thick hull, 1.25 inches. Beautiful boat. But then I ended up with this boat from Robin. It's an ultralight fiberglass boat. So it's not only fun, but if there's an incredible way to travel the world, sailboat would be pretty awesome. Those long passages across, big open water, maybe not so much fun. Maybe it can be if you've got enough good books and the weather is, okay. Some of my scariest days ever in my life have been aboard boats at night when it's dark and foggy and stormy and big waves or big swell. I haven't liked those. But on days when it's beautiful, when the weather's good, and you're just cruising along without the noise of an engine, without the smell of exhaust, just that pure, beautiful breeze pulling you along, it's a pretty amazing thing. So, the power of the wind. Something to consider, something to think about harnessing. And I didn't even get into the wind being used to generate electricity, which we're all so, addicted to at this point in time. All right, that's enough for today. I hope you've enjoyed, and have a good rest of your day.